Hello, everyone. Welcome. Welcome to this really exciting episodes of Lunch Bite with myself and Ty. We're super excited to have you after all of the Microsoft Ignite announcements. Just a quick reminder that do you want to go to the next slide, please? Thank you. Just a quick reminder for today's episode that we want everyone to be mindful of our code of conduct. And that means be aware of others, be welcoming and respectful, be understanding of differences, be friendly and patient, be open to all questions and viewpoints, and be kind and considerate to others. For our full code of conduct, please go to aka.ms/events.coc. Just another reminder that this show is available with live captions on Learn TV and YouTube. And before we start, we want to start off as we always do. So what is Lunch Bites? It's a show that we air every 2 weeks. Myself, Ty, and Steph are usually joined by technical experts from all over the UK to answer all of your top questions all about Azure. So if you have any topics or suggestions for Lunch Bites, please let us know. Thank you. And hi, I'm here today as your host, Annika. I am a technical specialist at Microsoft. I kind of deal with the retail side of the industry and talk about all of the app innovation services that we have to offer. And I'm here with Tig.
Thanks, Annika. Hi, everyone. I'm Tig Brennan. I'm a cloud solution architect for Microsoft UK. I work in the digital and app innovation space. So this means I cover all things from our PaaS and our serverless offerings all the way up to kind of that low-code options of Power Platform, as well as driving like GitHub and Azure DevOps. So great to be here again. And usually we'll have Steph as well. And hopefully we might have Steph join us later on in the session as well. So thanks for joining us this week. We've got a really exciting panel session this time around. So typically we might be offering content that's driven around one particular technical topic. But as we've just had Microsoft Ignite, we thought we'd have a great opportunity now to do a recap on that. And so we've got some brilliant panelists here today to join us. And I'm just bringing them up on screen as well. We're going to go a round of intros first, just to introduce everyone. So Loveland, do you mind taking us away with who you are and what you do at Microsoft?
Yeah, hi all. I'm a senior cloud solution architect and I lead the team of public sector for digital and app innovation. So mostly I work with government customer and looking forward to this session today.
Brilliant. Steph.
Hi everyone, I'm Steph. I'm a manager in digital and app innovation, helping primarily manufacturers, industrial organizations, and pharmaceuticals use tech. So manufacturing and things are very close to my heart, as is data and AI and how we can integrate that into software.
Great, thanks, Steph. And April.
Hello, I'm April Edwards. I'm a cloud developer advocate at Microsoft, and I'm a DevOps practice lead. I sit here in the UK. I also work globally. I focus a lot on not only DevOps practices, but end-to-end delivery in Azure with GitHub, Azure DevOps, infrastructure as code, and app transformation.
Brilliant. Thanks, April. So for those watching live right now, the way we're going to do this is we're going to jump into a few of our sort of like favorite topics from Microsoft Ignite and offer the recap. But we want it to be as interactive as possible, really. So if you're joining us on YouTube or Twitch or on the Microsoft Reactor, then please send in your questions live. We get a view of some of those questions that come through. So we'd love to show your questions live on the show and get the panelists talking about whatever you want to discuss around Microsoft Ignite. So before we jump into it, just to give a recap of what Microsoft Ignite is, it's one of the largest tech conferences in the UK. It's not just the UK as well, actually. So this year, Microsoft offered a spotlight on the UK and several other nations, but it's a Microsoft global event as well, where we get, for example, IT pro devs, developers, all to join us and talk to us around the technology that Microsoft is developing for the year. So it's a great opportunity really to announce sort of technical things that Microsoft have done in the last 6 months. And often this can be kind of like the second option along with Microsoft Build, where we previously did a recap session from that as well. So they often go in tandem, really. So as we jump into the content for today, I want to bring all the panelists up on screen together. And Steph, if we start with kind of the topics that you were really interested in, do you mind giving us sort of an intro to what they were and talk us through some of your favorite Ignite announcements?
Sure. I'm glad we're putting data first. It's always good to have that happen. We definitely won't get into any flame wars, though, I promise, around which techs are better. So some really cool announcements inside data and AI during Ignite. So one of the really great things that has been emerging over the past year is the Azure OpenAI services. So how we're bringing some of the most complex, most valuable models that are general purpose into use for everyone. So previously we've had great language models to help us be able to do things like GPT-3, and we're seeing that rolled out into Microsoft products and beyond. Now we're also including DALL-E 2, which enables you to generate images on the fly based on some text. So you might have also seen the announcement about Microsoft Designer and how you can actually create custom stock images inside the program whilst you're building cool things like these lunch Bytes backgrounds, and being able to do that with no graphic design skills. So some really great capabilities. People are using it in kind of a manufacturing type of setting to help with product development. You can use this kind of thing to start generating potential schematics and all sorts of really cool things. So I'm really infused about how much cool stuff there is in the open AI space. But we also have things like, which sound quite dry, like Form Recognizer, where we can actually now read contracts in more consistently and be able to understand contract clauses and stuff. It sounds boring, but in a big business, you end up with so many contracts from your suppliers, your customers, being able to go, what are all my GDPR clauses or all my service level agreements? And just be able to have those at your fingertips and being able to get those will make compliance and other things inside a business a breeze. So I'm really loving how much AI capabilities we have. And whilst I'm an R girl, we're even bringing even more of this to .NET. So previously there's ML.NET, and they've now just made a .NET library for Synapse ML, which used to be called ML Spark. MML Spark. And there's a great library that wraps cognitive services, being able to do things in Spark, being able to build custom models, use some great capabilities. So it's really brilliant that we're making machine learning accessible and, for software devs and usable inside software. So you don't have to do as much complicated stuff to make your machine learning and your software talk to each other. With my manufacturing hat on, because I love manufacturing, we've got two great announcements. One is some improvements in Azure Data Explorer. So Azure Data Explorer can be used for lots of things that allow you to do basically like high-scale log and time series analytics. Whether you're doing it from your IoT devices or log data from different systems, anything that is like semi-structured data that comes in kind of activities or in batch log type things is brilliant in Data Explorer. And it's also available in Synapse. But with some of the recent announcements include the ability to ingest data from other clouds, and being able to start bringing this data and some of the things that you could do around anomaly detection, predictive maintenance, and all sorts of cool things, being able to output those into stream analytics. So you can do a whole set of streaming capabilities as well to be able to do real-time decision making. And then the final cool thing, again, with sort of like my manufacturing hat on, is now there's a bunch of really great connectors in Azure Data Factory for SAP. SAP is one of the world's biggest enterprise resource planning tools, and we have a great partnership with running SAP on Azure. One of the things that we often want to be able to do, though, is be able to take some of the underlying data and be able to use that to make business decisions and add in machine learning and slice and dice it in different ways. So now we're going to be able to ingest data from Azure with Azure Data Factory from SAP much more easily, lowering the amount of tech you need to get that job done. Perhaps opening it up for the very first time for some of your for some businesses, and really being able to make smarter decisions around supply chains, around inventory management, about process optimization, and more. So we have some really great data and AI announcements in Ignite. And I'm going to stop gushing now and let somebody else gush about the cool things.
I think that's brilliant. It's great to hear on the SAP side of things as well, because get a lot of customer conversations where they're looking to get that data from the SAP landscape, and typically we might be talking around logic apps as a solution. So it's good that we've got this data factory story to tell now as well. I wanted to pick up on the DALL-E 2 that you mentioned. I think this is a brilliant announcement as well, and I'm excited to see how it gets intertwined with Microsoft Designer. I know that when, for example, we had design ideas land in PowerPoint, and then suddenly everyone was able to make quite nice looking PowerPoint slides, a lot easier than before. And I wonder if DALL-E 2 will have the same kind of impact with people making social media designs. And I guess, what's your thoughts on that, and where you see the future for DALL-E 2?
Yeah, I think it'll really help us be able to make bespoke images and outputs and build really slick assets. And coming from a startup background, that's really important to be able to do that quickly and to be able to make things look good. So I think it'll help big enterprises, but it'll also help a lot of businesses get off the ground, look professional. One of the challenges that we have with Microsoft's responsible AI focus is we need to make sure that the images that we're building are inclusive, and that the images that we train these types of models on are from diverse groups of people, so that we don't end up having some of the world's biases kind of automated at scale with that image generation. So we just need to be conscious as we build images that we build the right images to match our business.
Yeah, absolutely. Completely agree. And I think there's also an interesting conversation when you get into that AI side of things of ownership of images as well. In terms of you've got some kind of developer working on the solution. Do they count as an owner? Can DALL-E itself be the owner of an image? And there's a lot of interesting points, especially when you then have people, for example, creating art using DALL-E and winning competitions as well with that art. So yeah, I think it's something we should definitely be keeping our eye on, and it's important to focus on the diversity inclusion aspect of that as well.
Yeah.
April, Lubna, did you want to tune in on any of this as well?
So yes, I'm going to touch on two things. On the AI side, we had the question about using AI when we're just automating business processes. Absolutely. I did a project with a customer. It is published as a white paper. It was all under NDA at the time, but we were automating a business process to take off the human stress. And I actually had a conversation with someone about this on Reddit the other day. We were processing dangerous and sensitive images for a policing body, if you will. And it is an internal business process. It was something a human did, and it added stress to the human. It also took time, the amount of time it took. So when you're talking about using AI, you're able to accelerate what your people are doing. And also in that instance, we took the stress off a human, and then the human could vet it after the AI processed it, but it cut down the amount of hours they had to spend visually processing something or doing something. And it's all about the automation side. And developing software is amazing. We should be using AI for it. There's a lot we can hook into it, because anytime we develop software, we're generating data. What do we do with that data? What humans are interacting? Can we save that time? I'm all about automation, whether that's automating with AI, code, or whatever. There's things we can do to make everyone's life a lot better and to make the software better as well.
Yeah, I would like to add that we have got things like cognitive services, which are really, simplify the journey for a developer. And it's not taking anything away, but it's allowing you to do things that you weren't able to do before. So power to AI for that.
And I think the
Yeah.
question to the person who asked it, Psychotics J, for medical regulatory, absolutely. We had at Ignite in the UK on stage Dr. Justin Green, who is an orthopedic surgeon who's using AI to improve patient care. So anytime you're working with medical, the data is sensitive, but there's a lot of things you can do with it to help patients and also the practitioners, especially under high stress in the NHS, especially.
Yeah, and Lubna, you mentioned the cognitive services and Steph Form Recognizer being part of that area as well. I see impacts that Form Recognizer has on loads of projects in terms of just reducing the number of people hours they spent on projects as well. So just confirming to that point, April, that you were making around the impact for businesses there as well. Thank you so much, Steph, for talking around the data and AI piece. Lubna, if we jump to you and like, what are some of your key takeaways from Ignite?
There was some really great announcement, which I wasn't expecting, so which is good. One of them was around Kubernetes. As we all know, how challenging it can be to manage the cluster, but it's even more difficult when you've got multiple clusters to manage. So we've announced another service called Azure Kubernetes Fleet Manager, which is in preview. It simplifies the multi-cluster management. And it allows customer to group any combination of AKS clusters to simplify their multi-cluster workflows, like workload propagation and multi-cluster networking as well. As you know, at Microsoft, we love open source technology. One announcement I saw was around managed service for Prometheus, which will be a great offering, especially when we are monitoring and modernizing and innovating with our application. I think that would work really well with the offerings we already have around Azure Monitor Container Insights and Azure Managed Grafana that was announced a few months ago as well. Now, moving on to the developer sort of challenges that we see, how difficult it is when you onboard a new developer within your organization, setting up a new environment. That's where DevBox was announced at Microsoft Build about 6 months ago. The good news is we have already got a Visual Studio image for DevBox, which is now generally available on Azure Marketplace. And that will allow many organizations with getting the developers set up fairly quickly, minimize environment setup time it takes, promote collaboration, and maximize environment security and compliance as well. So these were the 3 highlights for me. There were other sessions, those were done on Ignite. They caught my attention around Dapper, how great it is and how it could transform developer experience, where we have got APIs. Those are maybe built in Java or .NET or Python, how you can, build, developer experience within just with Visual Studio. So you can talk to each API using Visual Studio Code, but you don't have to lose that experience. You can do it all within, you can execute all 3 APIs from Visual Studio. Those are running on a different language, and you can do breakpoints and watch what's happening in the back to develop effectively. More distributed application. It's as it's in the name. It works great.
Yeah, Dapper is really exciting. I'm looking forward to seeing how I'd love to see some more use cases of how they're using Dapper and making it into real life, because I see a lot of people when I talk to, they're not really sure what it is in the first place. And so it's trying to get Dapper out more publicly with these use cases, like you mentioned, Lubna, is I think the next steps for that area. In terms of like you mentioned around AKS and improving like the management side of things, one of the services that was announced at Build was Azure Container Apps, and that being more of a managed platform with running AKS under the hood. what do you think around the impacts that Azure Container Apps will have in relation to AKS?
I think it fits really well in containerized workload space where customers don't want to take on the burden of looking after Kubernetes, but they are developing microservices. That's where Azure Container Apps are great. And I'm glad you took me there, because there was another announcement around Azure Container Apps that if you're starting your journey and you are starting to deploy containers, so for example, we have got app service right now where you can deploy individual container and you can, get your application running. But if you have got microservices sort of architecture that you're working towards, you can deploy those containers within Azure Container Apps. We are also working on tooling that would allow you to migrate your containers from Azure Container Apps to AKS when you feel like you need more control and more governance around your containers. So there shouldn't be any hesitation on adopting Azure Container Apps, because it fits best of both worlds. And if you feel like you need to scale going forward and not ready for AKS, make a start with Azure Container Apps. And then when migration tool is available and you are ready, then migrate your containers onto Kubernetes.
Yeah, we're seeing those sort of questions already being asked in the field, particularly around that migration, when that opportunity is going to come. Like you say, frees up sort of that ability to maybe go down a more controlled route as well that you might want to do. One of the announcements I saw with Ignite, and I guess maybe this is kind of fitting into the accelerating innovation theme, is, and you kind of touched a little bit about Power Platform, but one of the things I saw was Power Platform pipelines. And I don't know if you saw this as well, but essentially what this is doing is when you're developing a Power App, and we get now a lot of what's called like fusion development teams, where you might have a large enterprise application or some APIs that you've got, and you want to expose this with a nice and easy to develop UI, front end UI that you can develop with, for example, Power Apps. And so you get this fusion of pro dev versus system dev and how they work and combine together. And so what pipelines for Power Platform does is it allows you to add the governance that you really need with Power Platform. That isn't necessarily the easiest thing to implement at the moment. There's things like the Center of Excellence Starter Kit to help people with their Power Platform development, particularly on Power Apps governance. But around pipelines, what it does is it lets you sort of combine your Power App with DevOps, and instead of publishing straight to your exact your app that you've got running in production, instead you can publish to, for example, a test environment, and you can run your Azure DevOps pipelines with tests and essentially configure a way for you to double check your publication before it goes up to production. And I saw that announcement. I thought that's brilliant. That's going to help solve a lot of issues for Power Apps. I don't know, panelists, did you see this as well?
Yeah, I loved that session as well, because most of my customers in public sectors are looking to move to Power Platform, where they want to, low code has been there. It's not a new thing. So, there has been impression that it's just come in and, you don't need developers sort of thing. This is basically replacing what we've already been doing using Word and Excel and basic automation in the background. So Power Platform is like low code 3.0, where it's looking at the challenges that our organizations and customers have and addressing them effectively. So governance has been, I think, top of the mind for Microsoft. There was a lot of announcements around simplifying the journey for organizations where they feel like they have given space to innovate to citizen developers, but they don't know how to control and govern that in the most effective way. So guidance that was quite prominent was, don't worry too much, like tightening up everything. Take it as a phased approach that there are 5 stages. So from initialization to repeatability of the assets you are developing, and then going all the way to efficiency of your organization. So start with simple, monitor using out of the box analytics, that's already provided, be more reactive with governance. But gradually, we've announced a Center of Excellence starter kit that could allow you to govern in for a more enterprise where you want to set up your own custom rules. And it's a really great package where it has got dashboards, apps, and flows pre-built, and you can just follow that process and improve your governance for Power Platform. So yeah, that was the key I took from that session.
And I love that we're able to do more DevOps around Power Platform, because generally I don't touch something if I can't see it in code in my GitHub, kind of thing. So it's really great that we're able to support that, and to kind of Lubna's point about governance and making sure that you enable lots of people to still be able to innovate. We see kind of a process where lots of people can make apps, try them out, and when they gain traction, they can also be moved into central IT to look after, to make sure that they're meeting the broader needs. So it's really great when something reaches that point to be able to turn that into a way out of the citizen developer world with multi-author capability now as well. Multiple people can work on the same app. But be able to turn it into something that's a coded artifact that can go through the same rigor, compliance, and security standards that the rest of the centrally managed assets and software can go. So I think that'll really help reduce some of the worries that organizations have around Power Apps and helping it avoid becoming a mess of shadow IT.
Definitely. April, did you want to add anything to this?
Yeah, I think all of us, Lubna and Steph, you've touched on it. We're lowering the barrier to entry to getting into Azure, right? We used to call this developer velocity, developer enablement. We have these key phrases we use at Microsoft to help like push these things, but we've all touched on it. We're lowering that barrier to entry with Azure Container Apps, with AI and ML, and it's all happening to help everyone and to get going with like a managed service and have DevOps baked into it. And we should call it DevOps, but the ability to automate what we do and get going on the platform.
Yeah, I think this transitions the conversation quite nicely when we're talking about developers and then moving into the GitHub and DevTools space. April, when it's come for you for some of your highlights from Ignite, do you want to let us know what those were?
Yeah, I mean, the theme of Ignite was, there was two things. One was doing more with less. I think especially as we have skill shortages here in the UK and across the globe too. But we really focus on the UK side of it. And we want to accelerate people's innovation and we want a complete platform for our developers. So a couple things that I really liked was the GitHub Advanced Security announcement for Azure DevOps. The reason why is when we talk about DevOps or developer tooling, where we keep our source code is really key. We have a lot of customers using Azure DevOps. The product is not going away. It's super mature. We just don't release as many features onto it because it is mature, but we always see all the new features in GitHub because we're trying to bring that feature parity up, which is really key. So people love the GitHub Advanced Security features that they're getting in GitHub. They're like, great, when's it available for Azure DevOps? So we've announced that it's coming. So I'm really excited about that because as a developer, I hate security. Like it scares me. And there's always a security person and I'm like, I don't want to do this thing. But I had to as a developer. And if I have tooling that enables me to be a better developer and be more secure, to start secure and stay secure, that's what a lot of these tools are doing. We also had a really good announcement around, I'm just pulling up the name, sorry, Defender for DevOps. So I've used Microsoft Defender in the cloud to scan my images. I always talk about image scanning. That's something that people don't always think about in their pipelines. Like, yeah, I'll just deploy my image, no big deal. But we don't check for issues in our images enough. So also looking at Defender for DevOps is great. We're baking in some products in Azure, and I think Steph and Lubna both touched on it. Getting started with those things baked out of the box, baked into the product. We're seeing more and more now. So we call it DevOps, but it's tooling to help that end-to-end scenario and make us more efficient and more innovative as we go to the cloud.
a lot of space there for developers. I know when we talk about integrating security into those pipelines, that's, I guess, the first start, right? And making it easier for developers at that point. Steph, looking at your experience of developing, is there any kind of things you wanted to talk around on the security side, some of those announcements and things that April was talking about?
Yeah, I liked the Power Pages announcement where WAF, the firewall is already built in. So, things where as a developer, you really don't know where to start. As a developer, we love developing. And as April mentioned, we don't want anything to do with security. We just want it to be secured. So that sort of mentality, I think Microsoft are catering for, where you go and build applications using low-code, no-code technology, and security is already a part of our offering. So yeah, that's it from me on that.
Yeah, I love the secure by default approach that Microsoft takes. No databases without passwords sitting out on port 80 for everybody to be able to steal the data. That just kind of, it makes it a lot simpler for us to get things right first time. And the bringing in of GitHub Advanced Security for Azure DevOps and things like that really helps us be able to go faster as devs, because the more that we can standardize our quality and security safety nets in our business and put them in for every project, we can be more certain that we're getting things right and we can ship more quickly. We don't have to wait as long to go through as many manual processes. And doing all of this verification also means we build up a lot more trust inside the organization, that we're focused on the health of the business. And I think that really helps us to have better collaboration around what's valuable in the organization and how we deliver that as a tech team. So I really love being able to put as much unit testing, as much security testing, as much compliance scanning inside inside our pipelines and things. And a great question from the chat: what is the difference between GitHub and Azure DevOps? What's the real difference? So I would say, from my experience, GitHub is brilliant if you're doing a lot of work that involves open source, and especially if you want to work out in the open. It's great for organizations to be able to add all their repositories, to a team to be able to see them, work on them, and be able to contribute. The problem that I found with GitHub when I was running a business, technology business, was right now the enterprise level tooling is still being built up. So I found it a bit more difficult to manage a program of work across multiple repositories and multiple interconnected activities. So I actually had all my repos in GitHub, and that was our home. But we had Azure DevOps for our program management, and where we'd raise our kind of backlog and do our sprint planning and our Kanban boards and things, because we could get a more holistic picture. So Azure DevOps is kind of more geared currently towards that enterprise level of capability, and has the scopes of access privileges and things like that fit much more into that enterprise way of managing access and privileges. So as a dev team, do you want to be able to go fast and maybe somewhat loose? Or I think, given that you're in a regulatory scenario, Psychotics J, do you want to be able to make sure that everything is strongly governed with lots of enterprise security features to make sure that your data your code stays in the country of residence that you need it to, that only the right people can have the fine-grained permissions that you set, and that it integrates with things like Azure Active Directory.
Yeah, and I'll touch on that as well. So Alex J and everyone else, I put a link in. A video was released yesterday about Azure DevOps, Zero to Hero. Again, I'll always say it's a fully baked in product. So the first thing I ask people when they ask what product to use, I'll say, where does your data need to reside and what compliance do you need? So Azure DevOps has a compliance element, very much so. It also has your data sits, as Steph mentioned, in your Active Directory tenant. So if you are, let's say, licensed in the UK, registered it in your Active Directory tenant in the UK, your data stays in the UK. Or if you're in the EU or in the US, it stays wherever your residing tenant is. So that control plane to where your data sits is absolutely crucial, especially with regulatory compliances. And it has a lot more features. So GitHub is amazing. It's an amazing tool. There's a lot of open source projects, but you don't have that Active Directory granular control yet. And Steph said it, it's not quite enterprise level. We talk about a lot at Microsoft. We're promoting it because we are trying to get people on it, especially in the enterprise space. But a lot of customers, that barrier to entry is, where does your data need to reside? So that's always the first question. And the second is, when you have GitHub projects, they're nice, but you don't get the full view that you get in Azure DevOps boards, which is full end-to-end configuration. Your PMs can use it, your ops team, your security team, every person can use Azure DevOps. GitHub is still developing those products, but they're not nearly as mature as you get in Azure DevOps. So I threw in the link for the Azure DevOps video because it literally goes through every single feature, because it's not just CI/CD. But there's, little shameless self-promotion, but this is why we put the video out, because people are still utilizing it. And if anyone ever wants to ping me and ask me questions of, I had a customer, a big customer in the UK, asked me yesterday about comparing like Azure DevOps to AHA and then GitHub to Azure DevOps. I mean, you're comparing apples to oranges. So it really is that it depends conversation where, and if you have, and like Steph said, you have your code in GitHub, you can integrate it into Azure DevOps, into pipelines. You can hook it into board. You can do all this amazing stuff. I have a blog coming out Friday based on the video, but additional features like, hey, I'm already in GitHub. How do I hook into Azure boards to get that full project manager experience? So people ask it, and that's why I'm doing the blog this week. So it will come out this Friday on the dev blogs on the Microsoft site.
And April, I just wanted to ask you a little bit about, I guess, the feature set. When you're talking about GitHub being amazing, and Azure DevOps is obviously a brilliant product as well, but what sort of caught your imagination with GitHub? Or if someone was new to trying out GitHub, what are those features that you'd recommend? Hey, give this a go, and then you'll know why I enjoy this so much.
So actions are easy to build, and they're easy to find and to search in the marketplace. So to do automation of like anything within your repo, actions are great. That's what caught me. The other thing that catches me about GitHub, again, I struggle with security, but I'm going to talk about this very specific use case. Traditionally, when we have repositories and we push our code to that repository, we then scan that repository. So if your developers have pushed a password or a secret, that history is in your commits. That is not going away. So if we talk about breaches that occur in the cloud, I'm going to name one, Uber. They put a secret in their PowerShell script. It isn't PowerShell's fault. It was the developer's fault for doing it. So how do we then prevent it? So the thing that GitHub, and this again coming to Azure DevOps, but the thing about GitHub is you can turn on advanced security, and we have something called push protection. So it stops that pull request before it gets into the repository. So those advanced security features are baked into GitHub. So there's kind of that twofold, the actions piece, so being able to automate literally anything, not just CI/CD, but then also having that ability to do the advanced security. Because as a developer, I don't want to get exposed for putting in a password somewhere. So yes, we can scan our repositories and we can find those passwords, but that history is still there. So if someone wants to go into our repository, they'll still find that password. They'll find the history of that password. So I really like some of the features that have come out, but that is coming to Azure DevOps because the customers have requested it. So when you do have features you want to see, shout, it goes onto the roadmap.
Thanks, April. Steph, looking at any other features that you wanted to mention that in your experience of using GitHub, what caught your attention with it?
For me, when I worked with customer on DevOps sort of implementations, they found Azure DevOps much simpler to use. I think the way the UI is, especially if they're not with a strong developer background, I do see right now it's best pick what's best for what you're trying to do. Using GitHub where you can for your code repository. As April said, security is baked in. Those features are coming to Azure DevOps, but then Azure DevOps for enterprise side of things where you want to manage your agile board and teams effectively.
For me, it's GitHub being the home of open source. So coding in languages like R and Python, writing our own internal packages and capability, I was able to see my code, go straight to the dependencies that somebody else had written, their source code, be able to see how they wrote a GitHub action to test something, be able to write a GitHub issue or even submit a pull request. Or be able to sponsor and thank the author for this really important piece of code that made my life so much simpler. And just that fact that I was immediately in the ecosystem and able to contribute back as I was getting that value is just fantastic. I love being in that tech community.
Brilliant. Annika, I think we're going to jump on to the next topic. I'll let you take this away for us.
Yeah, firstly, I just want to say it's really nice seeing an all-women panel today. It's nice and encouraging for people like me who've just started my career very early in my career. And I know we talked a bit about this in Ignite and talked about just being a woman in tech, but I wanted to ask you guys some questions, and it's open to all, so if anyone wants to answer, just go ahead and go for it. But firstly, I know you all come from different backgrounds and you all haven't had the same journey in tech. So I wanted to ask, what gave you that courage to take that step? What helped you take that step? Was it a mentor, person? And, how did you kind of skill up on that as well? So I've always been geeky, but I was, and I've used computers a lot. But I didn't actually do a huge amount of tech in my education. So for a very long time, the highest tech qualification that I had was a GCSE in IT. My A-levels were in things like maths. My degree is a philosophy degree. My journey into tech was always wanting to solve the next problem and always trying to find the right tool to do that job. So I kind of moved sideways and upwards into technology as I wanted to solve bigger and bigger challenges. And I think that that's a way that a lot of people, maybe coming from social sciences and humanities backgrounds, end up in technology, is solving brilliant problems that are in your area of interest. So I would advocate for everybody to find the next tool that helps them solve that problem in their business. And maybe one day you'll end up a coder, but you might just end up even more effective at your day-to-day job. Thank you. Lubna, do you have any words?
So the way I got into IT was, again, I think just I built an interest. I was a gamer, when I was in my teens. 2 hours a day, I had to just do some gaming in the afternoon. And I thought that was it. It wasn't related to anything I want to do in my career. I did sciences, all 3 sciences in A-levels. My degree was in accounts. But then luckily there was a module that covered computer sciences. And I was like, I'm enjoying that module more than my degree. Mm-hmm. So I just took admission in software engineering diploma in the evening. And that just became my life. And I really enjoyed all the languages. It helped me become a better thinker as well, because there were a lot of logical practices, a lot of while loops, a lot of if conditions, but you were constantly thinking what you were doing. And I personally think it has impacted my career and my personal life in a very positive way, being a programmer, because I felt like it's given me tools to think effectively and be flexible. If something isn't working, do something else. If that's not working, do something else, but not to fail and keep on trying, working towards, success. So technology has got a big part to play in where I am, to be honest.
Love that. And April?
Yeah, I didn't plan on going into tech. I actually did a podcast with Lisa at the Edge, probably 2 years ago now. I went to a high school in the US that had computer arts and sciences, and my dad's like, no, she's here to play basketball. She's not here to do computers. But I'd always played with computers, video games. My parents had computers in the house because they both owned their own businesses. So I was used to writing things in DOS, and we were early adopters of having computers and the internet. And when I went to high school, in my first year, I got in trouble for being bored in the computer class. Like every student had to take minimum 2 years computer class in my high school. So my dad put me in the A+ class my second year, and I excelled. And then I went to university to study to become a doctor, having had experience in tech. And then I needed a job when I was working on my master's, trying to get into med school. So I applied for a job at Tufts University, and then very quickly I found my niche. I paid off all my debt. So medical school is really expensive. Education's expensive. And I felt like I found my people. I had an amazing team I worked with. Like I've always been geeky and weird, and I studied applied mathematics in my undergrad. And I just found my niche, and I loved computers, diagnosing them. And I worked in the whole stack of everything from data centers. And then I moved into development because I was like, yeah, data centers are fine. I've done that. I want more of a challenge. I love knowing how things work. So it really played on the skills I had as a soon to be doctor, and then moved into tech. And I just love it. I just love that things change so much, and it's okay to mess up. And I've had people in my career that have said it's a learning experience, and I've also had people fire me because I messed up. So it goes both ways. But I think the industry is really evolving to say it's okay to mess up. It's a learning experience. It's the DevOps mindset, right? It's a learning experience, not a failure. So for me, it's been having encouragement and working with great people in the industry that make me love what I do. And for me, it's helping people learn what I've learned or learn something else and seeing how that kind of takes off. So and I don't have, none of my days are the same. So I absolutely love it. And I work with some amazing people. So it's kept me going.
I love that. And obviously, so you guys kind of, some of you at least, started your journey quite late. So what kind of advice would you give to someone who's maybe taking a break, women who's probably taken a break from her journey in a different industry, and she wants to get into tech? What kind of advice would you give her? Do you have any resources that they can use to get into this industry?
In my experience, it's much easier to get into this industry right now, because before, I think usually girls had a fear of, programming, I can't do that. Yeah. But try it. It's not as difficult as it looks. If you've got logical mindset, you will excel at that. But there are so many fields, and especially now with low-code technology in our hand, they can make a start. There are a lot of certifications as well, but I think sometimes it doesn't help just going and learning everything without knowing exactly where do you want to go. So look at where your interest is. Try some, go into users groups. We run a lot of users group in the evening. Go and see what sort of technology they are talking about. Speak to experts, and then pick up a path that aligns to where your interest is. Aim for something that I want a job in this field, and for that I need to know this. A lot of our certifications are role-based certifications now as well. So start with fundamentals, start your journey, connect with other people in similar industry. That will definitely help you, because you can share throughout your journey what you have learned, where you want to go, and you'll get guidance throughout. So we, all of us usually are available on these events. Good to meet and connect and guide early in careers as and when they need it.
Thank you. That's amazing. Anyone else have anything to say regarding, women and being early in career or, later in career?
Yeah, I think Lubna nailed a lot of it, because I consider myself community taught. I've learned from presenters, I've learned from the wonderful people blogging, I've learned from the people contributing their code, and I've learned from books. Nothing that I've learned is self-taught. It is all from the wonderful community who have contributed their knowledge. One of the great things that I think has happened is the internet has really made this so much easier. There's, sites like Codecademy coming up soon. There's going to be the advent of code, where every day you get a new coding challenge, and you can see on social media people solving these things. So it's really great that you can now immerse yourself so readily in the technical community, and there's so many people who want you to succeed. And that's really encouraging, because sometimes I feel like tech is moving from one error message to the next. That's my developer experience. Solve one problem,
Move to
hit the next problem, and overcome. Having that there's people around you, really helpful. And actually, one of the things that you might be interested in doing is now there's a lot of coding boot camps. So you could spend 8 to 12 weeks learning how to code, how to do these things, and do it with a group of people who are in the same boat as you, who are cross-training or picking this up for the first time. And that's a really great way to build that experience, and also build some friends for life whilst you're at it.
That's amazing. That's really, really good advice, everyone. Thank you. April, did you want to say something? Sorry.
Yeah, just to add to that, I mean, when I was growing up, not that I'm grown up yet, but when I was younger in career, everything was paid for. I had to buy a book and read a book and then go take an exam. We have the Cloud Skills Challenge right now. There's free learnings. We have Microsoft Learn, we have the digital skills stuff. And right now you can do the free exam until November 9th. You can earn that free exam as part of Ignite. The other thing we have is we also did this at Ignite UK. We told a story of a woman who went and took a boot camp, and both Steph and Lubna have touched on this. The woman was, I don't know how old she is, but has a child. You know, she was not early in her career. She was middle of her career, and she went and took a boot camp and spent the time out of work, and then was able to transfer to a job using digital skills that she didn't have before. And digital skills are part of it, they're going to be part of pretty much every job going forward in the industry. And we have a huge skills gap here. So it is never too late to change that career. But both Lubna and Steph touched on it, having that community. There are user groups. Get volunteer at local schools as well, and build a community around the other parents. There are probably other parents that have children, and they're like, I'm bored of this parenting all the time thing. I want to up my digital skills. Maybe start a group at school through the PTA for the parents that are kids in school, but everyone needs some kind of study group. But there are also technical groups, learning to code, learn Scratch with your kids. They're early early in career folks, or will be. And it's fun. It's object-based. It's colorful, make games. And there's so many great ways to learn now that didn't exist when I was younger.
I started with Scratch and it was so much fun. So I remember my journey from there. And then I'm still not a pro coder, but I think using like Microsoft no code programs has really helped me kind of learn better, because I've kind of forgotten all of my coding that I learned at uni. We have a question for everyone. So what is everyone's favorite programming language?
For me, when I started, that will tell you how old I am. It was COBOL. With COBOL, because you had to write pages and pages and pages, and that helped me understand exactly what was happening under the hood. So if I've written a program, it gave me better understanding of what is actually I'm writing and what operation that code will take. But now .NET, live and breathe .NET right now.
For me, it's a bit of it depends. Like if I'm building enterprise quality software, I want a strongly typed language, and I'll reluctantly code .NET, but that's probably my favorite of those. But quite often I most love my glue languages, things that help me stitch lots of things together and get things done super quick. So R is probably my favorite programming language. And then even just things like, Bash and PowerShell, being able to do that command line activities to talk to all the things and do things is probably my kind of like next level favorite.
I put Golang in the chat. Golang's been amazing. It's great to see Golang available in App Service now. I started using Golang. Well, I found Golang easy to learn for me. I use it kind of as the basis of doing Terraform, which got me into like infrastructure as code. And Terraform uses HCL in the back end. So it was easy for me to learn. But PowerShell, I learned at version 2.0, and I've done a lot of work with the PowerShell team, and it connects things that we don't think can connect things. I use it in my pipelines all the time. I use it to do tasks and to do things. And for me, that's kind of like the hidden gem that connects my IT pro world to my developer world, and it's open source now. So for me, it's definitely been Golang and PowerShell. I've done a bit of C#. I have nightmares of C#, but I have trusted myself recently to pick a new project that scares me a lot less than the last one I was on.
Brilliant. I just want to touch as well. I mean, I just want to say, like, it's so important that we have this topic and that it can be addressed at a platform like this. And it's really good to see that we're using Microsoft Ignite and the channels that we have at Microsoft to be able to talk about this topic and talk about women in tech, and hopefully inspire another generation of people to get themselves into tech and experience the enjoyment that we get to experience each day working for Microsoft. One of the programming languages as well, I know I'm not a panelist on this, but I remember my experience of, like when you start making like websites for the first time, and then you're trying to make them responsive. And I remember my experience of like jumping from JavaScript to then chopping down my code into jQuery and having Ajax. And I remember all of that. And actually, it kind of reminded me of a video I was watching yesterday around Blazor and looking to get into designing websites using Blazor. So that's another area. If you've got any viewers that are looking at some potential options as well, then they can join me on my journey as well of trying to learn Blazor. So
I just had a technical blip because I was trying to show the back of my Surface, and I just like unplugged it from all my webcams and stuff. But to April's point about Go, absolutely my favorite way to build websites is with Hugo, which is a static website generator built on Go. It's super quick, and I plug it in with AMP for AMP from Google for doing super lightweight JavaScript stuff, so I can like consume APIs and things in my static website, write HTML, CSS, and Bootstrap and things, and it's just amazing. So like Blazor, yes, definitely, but I'd also say add Hugo to the mix if you want to build websites.
Yeah, I would like to just add, from what you've heard today, most of us didn't think of being in IT, but we landed in there one way or the other.
Yeah.
A lot of kids, at GCSE and A level, they have so much pressure to pick something and get on with that. And sometimes they fail to make the right decision, or once they get into studies, they realize it's not for them. It's never too late to explore into IT. And there are so many fields, even, within automotive industry, there is autonomous vehicle. Half of those are run using, various languages and programs in the back end, and also, virtual reality. So field is expanding, and it's never too late to try things out and see whether you have got a career in that technology.
Brilliant. So unfortunately, we're running out of time now on our panel session. So I just wanted to say a massive thank you to all our panelists, April, Lubna, and Steph, for joining us today. If you still want to be involved with Microsoft Ignite, then you can visit the Ignite homepage, and you can actually still grab your digital swag. So those who weren't able to make it in person, you can go ahead and grab digital swag, so backgrounds, teams, backgrounds, things like that, as well as this little virtual pass that you can see on screen. So once again, thank you so much to the panelists, and thank you to all the audience who joined us today.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay, so a couple of things that we wanted to round off at the end, and as part of our announcements and the usual sort of stuff we do with Lunch Bytes, is actually we're still heading to Scotland. So we've got a load of in-person events up in Edinburgh. So some open hacks for DevOps. So if you want to go and explore GitHub and running Azure DevOps and learning about that, then you can join a 3-day activity called an open hack and hopefully apply. So speak to your account teams if you're already engaged with Microsoft. Or contact us at lunchbytes@microsoft.com if you want any more information. Now, if you can't make it all the way up to Scotland, no problem. There's also virtual open hacks as well. So we've got serverless open hack on the 29th of November and a DevOps open hack on the 6th of December as well for you to join. And in future, in about 2 weeks' time, our next session is going to be delivered by Kevin Harris, who's one of our global black belts. So a person who's very specialized in a particular technology area. And this technology area that he's going to be discussing is taking us through a hands-on approach with Azure Container Apps. So we mentioned it today around AKS and essentially making that process a bit easier to deploy applications and run them. well, join us in 2 weeks' time with Kevin, myself, and Annika and Steph Rogers, where we'll talk through running with Azure Container Apps. So once again, thank you everyone for joining, and hopefully see you in 2 weeks' time.
Thank you. All
See ya.
right, bye.